So thank you all for joining us for the How to Find a Postdoctoral Scholar Position That Is Right for You workshop today. I am Valerie Burke, and I'm the Assistant Dean for Graduate Student Services, but I also oversee our Office of Postdoctoral Affairs here at UNLV. Today, joining us, we have Alyssa Critton. She's the Graduate Coordinator, Associate Professor from the Department of Anthropology. And I have Arthi Mohan. She is a postdoctoral researcher at Southern Nevada Water Authority. So what's great is Dr. Critton has supervises postdocs, and then Dr. Mohan is a postdoc. So we will get both perspectives here on this panel. We did have a third panelist that got sick. So we lost him today, but it has definitely been a bug that's going around. So I hope that everybody stays healthy. And let's see. We're going to discuss how to find the right position for you, answer any questions you may have, and let's go ahead and get started. I'll start with the first question, and then we can kind of see if the participants here have questions too. First is, what does a postdoctoral scholar do? And then we can just take turns over who answers first, since we just have the two panelists.
I'll have you go first.
Okay, so do you want me to answer first? Yes?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So
you can hear me, right?
yes, I can hear you. Yeah, I just want to make sure, that the actual postdoc has some talking time here. So I'm happy to go first. Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for joining. I know it's tough at the end of the semester, but I'm really happy that we're able to talk about this today. So that's a big question. Dr. Burke. Huge. What does a postdoc do? So first, I'm going to back up a little bit, if that's okay, if that would be all right for everyone. So I want to kind of introduce the way that I think about postdocs first before we kind of switch into that. Postdoctoral fellowships are really variable. And so to answer this question means we have to first appreciate that it's specialized training, but they're meant to support early career researchers who've already had some type of specialized training, but they need more, or they would like to do a research pivot. So it's challenging to answer the question, what do they do? Because it's very different based on whatever discipline you're in, the type of postdoc you find yourself in, the type that you apply for. But what they all share, for the most part, is training in a specialized research area. So for many, this means learning how to use a new research technique, or training in a new type of tool, supplementing or augmenting the training that you already had in your PhD in a particular way, in a new way, possibly a different direction. But overall, what a postdoc does, the point of a postdoctoral fellowship, is to give you some more time to grow, to kind of incubate as an independent researcher, and to foster that growth so that you become independent before you move on to the job market, whether that is a ladder rank tenure track position in academia, or whether it's moving into industry or the private sector, or working for the government, which I'll pivot to our postdoc to answer those questions. But it's really to get an additional type of specialized training. But importantly, it's not the automatic next step after you get your PhD. And I think that's one of the reasons why attending workshops like this are so important, because I think that it's really valuable for doctoral students to be thinking about whether a postdoc is right for them to begin with. And I think that requires really making sure that you've done some soul searching and really laying out what your professional goals are moving forward, and then that will help you figure out what type of research you will be doing, and what kind of being open to life's possibilities in terms of where you can seek postdoctoral funding. So that's my long spiel on what a postdoc does from kind of the 10,000 foot view, and I will hand over the mic now to my colleague.
So, hi everyone, I'm Arthi, and I have been a postdoctoral researcher with the Southern Nevada Water Authority for the past 7 months. So, I'm going to tell you what I think postdoctoral scholar positions imply from my experience for the past 7 months, and what I'm going to talk to you about a little bit about what my thought process was like before I started looking for this particular position. So a lot of postdoctoral positions are either at a university or an industrial setting, but there are also postdoctoral positions that are in nonprofit organizations and with government agencies. So, but irrespective of where the postdoctoral researcher position is, um, all postdocs are, I think, expected to function somewhat independently. A lot of postdoctoral positions are temporary positions and can range anywhere between 1 year to 3 years. Um, as a postdoc, you're generally expected to, design, organize, and conduct highly specialized research and advanced research. And there is an inherent expectation to publish, um, 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 which is part of the requirement that is intended for personal growth. And depending on the position that you're in, as well as the field that you are from, you will also have opportunities to supervise and provide guidance to a lot of undergrads, grad students, or if you're in an industrial setting or with a government agency, you might also have opportunities to sort of provide that mentorship to interns. So I would say in a postdoctoral position, you learn new skills, but you also apply the skills that you have learned through your PhD years. And you try to use it as an interim between your PhD and your subsequent career steps to sort of build the credentials that you think are actual gaps in your subsequent career hunt. And at the same time, you're also allowed to take your particular research from your PhD to the next level through a postdoctoral position. Again, this can vary depending on the field, like Alisa just mentioned. But I think the big picture is that you are moving forward in your career. It could be a postdoc position could be considered more like an internship to your subsequent steps. So I hope that helps.
Thank you both. Does anyone here have questions they want to ask? I mean, I have a lovely list, but I want to make sure if you guys have any questions right now, we can get to them. If not, the discussion might prop up other questions you might have down the road. Yasmin, yes.
Good morning, everybody. I just had a question about the how competitive is it to actually get one of these postdoc positions?
I can tackle that. So that's a big question. So one of the most, I think, opaque parts of getting a postdoc from my perspective is understanding the funding structure and how variable that funding structure is. There are several different types of postdocs. So kind of the big overview is there could be postdocs where they're already funded, right? So a PI, a principal investigator, somebody who's running a lab or has a research project that they're seeking a postdoc, they will advertise a postdoc position. And they already have a fully funded grant that has been awarded to them. And in those instances, the PI will expect you as a postdoc to contribute to an already existing research agenda. It may be fully kind of fleshed out, or it may only be partially fleshed out, but it's going to be determined. The basic kind of parameters are going to already be determined by the grant proposal and by the funding source. And in those situations, depending on the field, they're often very competitive. And those are the postdocs that you often find posted on national websites, international websites, websites through the discipline-specific national and international organizations. Even places like USA Jobs have all sorts of postdocs posted, right? So it will depend on the field, but they are competitive. The other way that postdocs can typically be funded are through, well, I guess there's two other ways. One is through, sometimes you have internally funded postdocs. So an institution will have postdoc money, and sometimes those are widely advertised and sometimes less widely advertised. And again, it really depends on the institution and the discipline. The last kind of way that you can get a postdoc is a lot of individuals will seek out a PI who they might want to work with and inquire as to whether or not they have postdoc funding or are interested in working with you as a postdoc. And in those instances, these are the kind that are like the most elusive, right? But these are postdocs that we at UNLV have had. We have less experience in terms of working with these types of postdocs. And if it weren't for the likes of Valerie Burke, those postdocs would have fallen through the cracks. And this is because it's a relationship that is formed and then the project is written together from the postdoc and the PI. This is the postdoc I had at UNLV was this type of arrangement. And in those situations, it's less competitive in that you've already selected your PI and you already know, should you get funding, that you'll be working together. So it's less competitive in that respect, but you still often need to find the funding and secure the grant that would support that research. And that's very competitive. Through NIH, they're very competitive. Through National Science Foundation, it varies. The percentage of proposals that are accepted vary based on the directorate, the kind of branch of NSF that you're applying to. So it really just depends on the discipline you're in and whether or not you can find a lab group or a PI that really fits with your research group and your research agenda. And if you find that connection and it's a good fit, then the chances are high that you will be competitive and qualified for that position.
Thank you very much.
I have another question from the participants. Are there specific experiences that make certain postdoc applicants more appealing? Great questions.
Can I answer that? So I would think that a basic technical skill, depending on your field, might be something that is going to be expected. But I think people, when they post for postdoctoral positions, I think there is a general understanding that the incoming candidate is looking to build further upon their existing skills. So I don't think there's going to be a requirement for you to know everything, but then you would have to be able to sell yourself in a way that with you coming with your existing skills, are able to further work on it and build on it and actually move forward and get the tasks done. So in my specific case, for example, talking again from my experience, so my research during my PhD was related to drinking water quality and treatment. And there are a lot of skills from my PhD that I bring to the current position. But then I am not 100% with regard to the technical skills that are required for this particular job, because it is slightly different and it is related to wastewater and potable reuse. So it's within the same field, but it is a slightly different area of expertise. And one of the reasons that I actually chose this position was to build further upon my drinking water quality and treatment expertise and broaden that horizon and make sure that with my basic skills that I already have, I'm able to venture into all of these, sort of different streams within the drinking water quality and treatment umbrella. So I did not have exactly the expected experience, but I had enough experience from my PhD that they were confident that I could transition slowly into the type of research that is currently happening at SNWA. I hope that helps.
Thank you. Perfect. I said thank you in the comments. I have a question. How much time can I expect a postdoctoral or scholar position to take up per week. So how long does the postdoc position, from my experience, I might be able to answer this one. I'm pretty sure it's a full-time job, right? 40 hours, 8 to 5 normally, but you guys, please chime in.
Um, I'm happy to answer. Yeah, it's definitely a full-time job. I would say it's probably more than 40 hours, most likely. And this is also because you are seeking that advanced training. And as has already been mentioned on the panel, typically comes with an expectation to publish and an expectation to essentially what you want to make sure that you can do by the end of your postdoc is to demonstrate that you are an independent principal investigator yourself. And so you're learning all the skills of whatever the training is and whatever the research is. But ideally, a postdoc is also a time to increase professional networks, to increase that kind of range of expertise in terms of communication styles inside your discipline. There's a lot of professional development that goes into this, and hopefully most grants have a postdoctoral mentoring plan associated with them if they're fully funded already. And those are important. Those are very key, important parts of a grant proposal because you have outside skilled individuals who are evaluating that postdoctoral training plan upon funding when that PI receives the grant. And so there should be professional development built in. There should be all sorts of things. So it's not just the research. It's a lifestyle at this point, right? So you are choosing to have a lifestyle as a professional researcher, whatever that means in your discipline. And so I think that it's not something that you do on the side. And very rarely do people have time to pursue other types of professional goals while they're in their postdoc. Certainly there should be an aim for work-life balance in terms of making sure that you have time for your friends and your family and your health or hobbies or, walking your dog, whatever it may be that you do for your own mental health and caretaking of yourself. But yeah, this is most certainly a professional position. It typically comes with a larger salary, much larger salary than a postdoc, than a doctoral stipend. And depending on where you get your postdoc, it can even come with health benefits. It just depends where that is. But yes, this is definitely a full-time job.
I'd like to add too, I know through hosting the Office of Postdoc Affairs here at UNLV, I've also gone to national conferences and I've gone to sessions on how other schools are hosting their offices and how postdocs are organized. And we're very fortunate here in that our postdocs get full benefits. They are full health coverage, 401k, annual and sick leave. So I would say that's definitely something you might want to ask as you're searching for postdoc positions, if those items are important to you. I would say definitely look at the job postings, or there are questions you can always ask during the interview as well. So I know here we also have a set minimum salary. I want to share also the National Postdoc Association website. I'm putting it here in the chat, but I guess if you're watching this on replay on YouTube, it's nationalpostdoc.org. So that has great literature. They even have resources, including a career center. We are a university. We have a university membership. So I think that gives you a super discounted individual membership if you wanted that. They host a conference once a year and professional development opportunities usually once a month. So you can see all of that on that website as well. Any questions, or I will go to my next one. Okay, here's one. How many positions should I apply to at one university?
Can I ask a clarification question, Val?
Yes.
You mean like you've gone through your PhD already at that institution and you want to know if you can apply for a postdoc at the same institution, or you
So
mean
say I'm here and I'm Valerie Burke and I want a postdoc position and I'm applying everywhere, but I see there's 3 openings at NYU. Should I apply for all 3? Should I not? Does it look bad to apply?
are you qualified for all 3 in this hypothetical scenario?
Good answer.
I think that one of the biggest pieces of unsolicited advice I give to students who are seeking kind of what to do in this next step is you are your own best advocate, and people are unlikely to fight for you as hard as you will fight for yourself. So my advice would be, if you think that you are a qualified candidate and that this is genuinely something that you can see yourself doing 50 plus hours a week, and that this really is a stepping stone to your next professional goal, then I say absolutely go ahead and apply. But you don't want to turn in unpolished work. You want to make sure that your CV matches the solicitation. You want to make sure that you really are a strong fit, as opposed to just blasting, applications out there in the world. That looks bad, whether it's 1 application or 15. You want to make sure that you are submitting quality application materials and that you really are qualified for that. That's my answer.
And I think it is also very unlikely that there will be multiple professors within the same institution doing the same type of research. So I think a lot of times research is going to be pretty niche. There will be similar research and there will be opportunities for collaboration. But then I feel like the probability of existence of a postdoctoral position and on the same campus for one candidate, the probability of multiple postdoc positions existing itself is pretty low, is what I think.
To add to a question I get a lot in our office is a postdoc something that I should be looking at? And so I would always say to check in with your faculty advisor here at UNLV. I know in some disciplines it's almost mandatory that you go into a postdoc position, and in other disciplines it's a little more up to you. So definitely check in with your advisor who's had experience obviously in that discipline for years. My next question is, what kinds of experience should I be looking to acquire to now in order to get a postdoc position? What ways can I build my CV now to make myself more marketable for postdoc positions?
In my opinion, it really helps to be someone who is proactive, who's reaching out to people, wanting to collaborate, wanting to work with others. So you can potentially generate publications and conference presentations. I would say work really well with everyone in the team, in your lab. So you have very strong recommendation letters when you do have to apply for positions in the future, because it definitely is part of the credentials that you're building for yourself for a postdoctoral position or another position in the industry or other settings. I would say don't hesitate to put forth new ideas. Don't hesitate to reach out to people and build new ideas. And when you are doing your PhD, there are typically projects that fund you and you focus on those projects. I would say broaden your horizon a little bit and make some time. You will be overworking. There is no question about that. But then you will also try to, test the waters in some of the other existing projects in your lab, and see how you can contribute. So I would say don't put yourself in a box. Be open to working with others. Be open to working on new ideas. Be open to suggesting new ideas, and be open to, let's say somebody else comes with you with an idea. Be willing to give it a shot. It might work or it might not work, but then if it does work, then you're moving forward. Maybe that will lead to a paper, or maybe that will lead to an opportunity to write a proposal. And one other thing that I would say is even during your PhD, if you can talk to your advisor and ask him or her for opportunities to do some writing for proposals. You don't have to win those proposals necessarily, but then even having that type of practice during your um, um, as you're pursuing your doctoral degree, I think is going to be really helpful. Even great if you win them, no question about that. But then just having that experience itself, I think, will go a long way. This is all if you're shooting for an academic career. Yeah.
Any questions on that? All right. What are the responsibilities of a good mentee?
Okay, I can handle that. Some of these were already mentioned. So in fact, the previous answer was a beautiful example, in my opinion, of being an excellent mentee. And hopefully the themes there were clear, but the themes are communication and collaboration and having some ability to kind of see the perspective, right? I think that just having that openness, that kind of life of the mind, is a really important part of being a postdoc. Oftentimes you are expected to be flexible. Oftentimes you are expected to do much more in that role than, it's not just an extension. It's not at all an extension of a doctoral dissertation. So I think that that's a common misconception, is that the same type of approach to the research group and to the research task at hand is just kind of an extension of what you did as a doctoral student. That's rarely the case with a postdoc, as it's a new research group. Oftentimes, if you have a short postdoc, if you have a 1-year position, you have to hit the ground running. So I think that this also, sometimes you can have a much longer postdoc that's maybe 3 years. A lot of the postdoctoral positions in Europe, oh, sorry everyone, the dogs are saying hello. If you have a postdoctoral position in Europe, for instance, it's a much longer period of time. And oftentimes those postdoctoral positions end up being like semi-permanent research faculty. You can be a postdoc for 3, 4, even 5 years with the same research institute. And so the expectations for being a good mentee will also be contingent on the type of postdoc that you find yourself in. But I think that being open to communicating, having a really strong open communication relationship with the PI of the project, I think is one way to get off on the right foot. And also just trying to do your best to make sure you have those deliverables that are required of you, and be curious, be engaged with the material. Those are my little answers there. That's a big one, Val. That's a huge question. So those will just be my little nuggets.
Thank you. Anything you'd like to add? Dr. Mohana, I'll move on to the next question.
I think the only other thing that I would like to add in addition to all of Alicia's that I completely agree with is that you're going to also have, disagreements with your PI and how you handle those disagreements and how you navigate through those, you will run into challenging situations. And I think it's very important to make sure that you navigate those challenges the right way and keep that relationship. And I think that also is a very important part of being a good mentee, because it's not always going to be smooth. Yeah, that's the only other thing I wanted to add.
I appreciate you adding that. Thank you. I guess let's start right at the beginning with where do you look for postdoc positions? I suggested the National Postdoc website, but I'm sure there's other ways as well.
A lot of times you hear about postdoc positions, through word of mouth. And sometimes there are, the regular job portals like Indeed. They do list postdoctoral positions. Sometimes you can look for it on the university websites. One other thing that I have found pretty useful is, the job portals that exist on websites of organizations, professional organizations. They have their own job portals too, and a lot of times postdoctoral positions are listed on those. Um, and and especially postdoctoral positions like the one that I am currently pursuing, there is regular hiring going on. So if you know of postdoctoral positions that will open up in the future, you can start targeting it 3 years before you even want to try applying for it. So yeah, those are my 2 cents.
That's great. I would just add on something that I think is really important that was just mentioned that we haven't really said specifically yet. The cycle for a postdoc is not the same as the cycle for graduate admissions. So you have rolling applications for postdocs, meaning they're available. You can be applying 12 months in a calendar year, depending on when that postdoc is hiring. There are many different strategies that you can use. So one is word of mouth or job boards for national organizations that are discipline specific, which was just mentioned. Also, there are higher ed job boards. So not only things like ZipRecruiter, but even LinkedIn or even like Inside Higher Ed Careers, they all have postdoctoral boards. So they're actually they even have this is true for, I want to just not outside of STEM, humanities and social sciences is also the same. Those postdocs are also listed on those websites. Often institutions, kind of collective institutions like the University of California, for instance, often has postdoc boards that will give you all the postdocs at several of their campuses. So that's one way. What else? What else could we think? I think they're out there. There are many, many, many postdocs available. So I think that part of it is also just getting creative with where you search for some of these positions. There are a lot of postdoctoral training opportunities available outside of the US as well. So one of the first steps is just to make sure you do a really thorough search of what might interest you. And I would argue, I would definitely advise you to make a list of the types of training that you want, or kind of brainstorm, make a list yourself of what you would like to seek a postdoc in, and then go searching, as opposed to the other way around. Because I think that your application materials will be much stronger if you kind of know what you're looking for, so that you can see that you might be a good fit for whatever it is that you're applying for.
And I think it is also important to put yourself out there, even when you're not actively looking, be actively networking. So, and inform people of your interests. So when there is an opportunity, people will actually think of you.
Points. Thank you for the feedback. So say we find the position, we get to the interview, and we're at the part now where they want to offer the job. Can you discuss with them, discuss the pay and the benefits? How one, can you, and two, how would you suggest approaching that?
I can answer that question from a government agency perspective. I would not know the answer to that from a university's perspective. But I think with government agencies, there is usually a certain budget that they have to stick to. So a lot of times, at least when you're getting started with, it's going to be very hard to negotiate your base salary and your benefits. But that said, you do have opportunities based on your performance to have yearly increments.
So I'll add to that. Again, it depends on the type of postdoc that you are applying for and the type that you, in this instance, that you will be offered. There is sometimes room to negotiate for a higher salary, or room to negotiate for things like additional resources for travel, but it really depends on the institution and the academic setting, and it also depends on what was written into the grant. So if you are writing your own grant proposal, having already identified a host institution and a PI, and you're essentially working with the PI to seek that funding to support a project, you will be working on building in your own salary. So in that respect, you have some latitude, some flexibility in terms of making sure that you're kind of getting the resources that you want and need to support you in your project. If it's already a funded position, then I agree, you will have kind of less flexibility in terms of advocating for that. But these are professional positions. So I think in almost all instances, you will have health coverage for the most part. There are still some internal postdocs at institutions that don't cover that, and it also is, there is an expectation that you should be receiving a livable wage as a postdoctoral fellow because you already have earned your advanced degree. And this is just additional specialized training that will essentially prepare you to be even more successful once you hit the government sector, the private sector, or the academy. So I'm not sure, Val, does that answer?
Yes, I can tell too from my research. I know how things are here. If it's grant funded, the money's already been reserved, and it's hard to find that wiggle room. I know too that some institutions have step programs, so it's built in where after your first year you get a certain increase in pay. After your second year, a certain increase in pay. We don't have that at UNLV yet, but let's also remember too, we're super young, and the Office of Postdoc Affairs is also a brand new office. And I want to say the institution I saw that at, it was Yale. So they've been around a very long time, but I'm always doing, peer research and institutions and looking to see different ways that we can, enhance and grow our postdoc experience here, and doing workshops like this that we've never done before. So thank you all for attending. Do you have any other questions? Oh, Alyssa just shared an article in the chat too.
I did, and for the people who may be watching the pre-recorded version, it's in The Guardian, and it's called "Applying for a Postdoc Job. Here are 18 tips for a successful application." And interestingly, it's also in that article, they link to something called Postdoc Diaries. I'm not sure if you've seen that, Val. It's really interesting, but it's a series of kind of 6 months on the job hunt of trying to find a postdoc. And so you get stories from kind of around the academy, and you get little anecdotes on what it's like to be at this career stage. So there's a lot of information out there right now to support the search, and including increasingly wonderful programming from UNLV. So this is a great opportunity that is being made available to you to start thinking about these things at this point. So yeah, just start researching. Inside Higher Ed has a lot of good content as well, if people are interested in doing a search on that.
One of the last questions I have is usually how long does it take to hear back after applying for a position?
I think that is really a function of the so many different things. First, the application pool. How many candidates are eligible to be interviewed. So in my case, it was actually a pretty short waiting time, because I think I had applied for this particular position last May, and I had my interview call in June, and I had the offer a couple of weeks after. So it was a rather quick process. But my case was also different. Again, I cannot talk about university postdocs, because when I was actively hunting for my postdoc position, I was actually only hunting for postdocs outside of universities. So maybe the timeline is a little different for universities. I'm not sure.
So again, I think it really depends. If you are writing a grant and you are seeking, you are essentially working to support your own research with a designated PI, and you're writing, like, let's say an NSF postdoc, for instance, it's often a 6-month period of time, and that doesn't include preparation, right? So once you find the person you might want to work with and you begin preparing those materials, it can be 6 months or a year before you hear back from those granting institutions. And so I think again, timeline is really contingent upon where you are applying. And often people apply to more than one postdoctoral fellowship. They don't just apply to one place and then cross their fingers and hope, although that is a strategy. There's a balance, right? There's a happy medium from applying to just one that you think might be the perfect fit, and just applying to too many where you're not really necessarily a strong fit. You don't want to just blindly start submitting applications out there. So I think that there is a way to find the right number that's a reasonable number that might work for you, whatever it is you might want to do. And oftentimes those decisions will be they may or may not come out, in a handful of months or maybe weeks if you're a really strong candidate and they're really searching for a postdoc to start. When I did my postdoc, they really needed the position filled very quickly because the research was ongoing and they needed to slot with someone in very quickly. And so from the time of application to the time that I started was 1 month, which was a bit of my head is still spinning thinking about that transition. But so it's highly variable.
Appreciate that feedback. It's a question I get often. So thank you for sharing that information. I want to open it up to our participants, our attendees. Any questions? You can turn on, or as I say, you can raise your hand. Stephanie, yes.
Hi, Valerie. I'm in cohort 2 of the Doctorate of Public Policy program. And so I'm curious if there are any opportunities, since we're not on a PhD track, if there's any opportunities for those of us in the Doctorate of Public Policy.
So Dr. Critton, that's a DPP. I don't know the answer to that. If DPPs qualify for postdocs.
I do not know the answer to that question either. Maybe that's something that we can get back to you on. That's a great question. Thank you, Stephanie. I don't know the answer to that one. I know that there are varied kind of additional trainings that you might be eligible for, but whether or not that would be a postdoc, I'm not sure. Sorry, Val. I don't have an answer.
And I know that's a newer program. Yeah, like she said, we're on cohort 2. It's a very new program. So you're definitely the first person to ask, and I appreciate that. I will circle back and get you that info.
Great, thank you.
Yes. Any other questions?
And I just want to let everyone know, I have another WebEx meeting that I have to beam myself into in the next 5 minutes. So if you have any questions just for me, I'm happy to take them now.
You can chat them or raise your hand, whatever.
Any and all questions. Or no questions.
Correct.
Yeah, Stephanie.
I have a question for you.
Okay.
How is your transition from a postdoc to an academic position? What was your experience during that transition?
Oh, that's a great question. And of course, I only have 4 minutes in which to answer that whopper of a question. I'm going to be honest, it was a hard transition and it was rough initially. And I wish, this is something I feel very passionately about here at our home institution is Val knows this, that postdocs are very near and dear to my heart, and the professional training that I think postdocs should have available to them across the board, I think sometimes is really, it's left wanting. I didn't know how to negotiate for myself. I didn't know how to ask for a higher salary. I had to ask colleagues for things like how to set up my startup package. I didn't know a lot of those basics for I could do a grant budget right away. I knew how to time all sorts of experiments in the lab where I was working. I knew how to negotiate international field work, right? I knew all the research components. I knew how to be an independent scientist. The postdoc really helped me gain the confidence and the professional expertise to do that. I knew the entire publishing process. I knew grant writing. I knew all those things. But in terms of the nuts and bolts of transitioning to being an assistant professor and what that meant in the university context, that was a bit of a rough transition for me. I figured it out. Having a mentor once I landed at UNLV was really helpful. I had a great mentor. He is a friend to the graduate college. Peter Gray in the Department of Anthropology was my mentor, and that was very valuable for me to have somebody that I could talk to figure some of those things out. But that was after I was already hired. So the job application process is something that I think we could really, as the academy could really focus on more in terms of training, not only for postdocs, but also for advanced PhD students, because I think that depending on your discipline, you're going to be hitting that job market at a different time. And if you have a postdoc and you're coming out of a postdoc, the skills that you talk about and what you bring to the table in the interview process are very different. And so I think, yeah, my short answer is it was rough, but I think it's also what has compelled me to really want to make sure that I'm service oriented in terms of helping postdocs when I can. So I guess my daughter would call that a happy accident, I guess, right? So taking something negative and turning it into something positive. I think it's often very challenging to transition. So I think having support available at the institution where you are onboarding is really helpful.
Thank you, Dr. Curtin. I know you need to leave now, and thank you so much for your time. If anybody has
Hi,
any
everyone.
questions,
Thank you. Thanks so much.
if you have any questions after that might come up, just you can always shoot me an email, OPA, which stands for Office of Postdoc Affairs, at unlv.edu. So OPA at unlv.edu. And if I need to reach out to our panelists, I can certainly do that as well. Let's see here. Before we end today's session, we would like to thank our presenters for sharing their time and expertise with us today, and to thank our participants for joining us.